Ken gave a presentation last November on the telescope, up close and personalized. He wasn't able to get quite all the way through it, so we brought him back to give a short presentation, part 2. Sure, I got it here.
That's not what I want. Just a minute. That's what I want. Okay. Here we go. The last presentation that I gave of this was actually about the optical telescopes that were in the history of us. This is going to be talking about those things that are mostly out of the optical range. And this is the history of the telescope, up close and personalized. And we'll start out right away in a vast array of telescopes dealing with other wavelengths that have been created is the next portion of this. The first of these is in 1931, Karl Jansky discovered that astronomical objects give off radio emissions. After World War II, a new era of astronomical observing began dealing with other parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, all the way from radio to gamma rays. Fix it. Thank you. Is that all right? Jansky discovered the radio emissions while performing research on terrestrial static with a directional antenna. Jansky was born in Oklahoma while it was still a territory, got its statehood in 1907. His father was Cyril Jansky, Dean of the College of Engineering at the University of Oklahoma in Norman. Karl attended college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and received a BS in physics in 1927. He joined Bell Laboratories the next year and was assigned to investigate atmospheric and ionospheric properties using short wavelengths of about 10 to 20 meters. These were to be used for a transatlantic radio telephone service. Jansky's specific job was to investigate sources of static that might interfere with the radio voice transmissions. Sometimes called Jansky's merry-go-round, the antenna he built had a diameter of 100 feet and stood about 20 feet tall. He rotated it on four Model T tires, making the direction of receiving the signal pinpoint. A small shed next to the antenna housed an analog pen and paper recording system. He recorded signals from all directions and categorized them into 3 categories: nearby thunderstorms, distant thunderstorms, and a faint, steady hiss of unknown origin. At first, he thought the hiss was solar radiation, but later determined that it was coming from the Milky Way center. Although other scientists were interested in his discovery, radio astronomy remained a dormant field for several years due to really a professional snobbery. A lack of respect for Jansky's little formal training as an astronomer delayed any interest by professional scientists to pursue his findings. However, Reber built a more sophisticated radio telescope in 1937, and it discovered various unexplained radio sources. By the way, Jansky died at the age of 44 of a heart condition. After World War II, radio astronomy grew with the introduction of larger and larger scopes. In 1957, the 250-foot Lovell-Jodrell bank was built, followed by the 300-foot Green Bank in 1962 and the 330 Effelsberg in 1971, and that led very soon thereafter to the huge 1,000-foot Arecibo scope. Many, however, were not dish-type. Infrared astronomy soon came into being in the 1960s, starting with balloons and moving to planes and rockets. NASA's Spectrospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy or SOFIA, was put into use in 2010. The first space-based infrared telescope was the Infrared Astronomical Satellite, launched in 1983. The Spitzer Infrared Space Telescope was launched in 2003. And in 2009, the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer WISE was launched. Ultraviolet telescopes appear to resemble optical telescopes. However, conventionally aluminum-coated mirrors cannot be used. Alternate coatings, such as magnesium fluoride or lithium fluoride, are used for them. Ultraviolet telescopes were developed in the 1960s. The orbiting Space Observatory satellite carried out observations in the ultraviolet in early 1962. The International Ultraviolet Explorer surveyed the sky for 18 years using an 18-inch aperture telescope with 2 spectroscopes. And the Extreme Ultraviolet Explorer, launched in 1992, was a satellite that operated at these wavelengths with a 9-year mission. X-rays from space do not reach the surface, so all X-ray astronomy must be conducted outside the Earth's atmosphere. Suborbital flights were used in 1948 to first detect X-rays from the sun, and as a residual also X-rays from galaxies and nebulae. The first such detected were from Scorpius X1 and the Crab Nebula in 1962. Several scopes were used before the first dedicated X-ray telescope was launched in 1970. 300 sources were discovered by the OURU. The improved successors, Exosat, Rosat, Chandra, and Newton, were later launched. Study of gamma rays was started in the early 60s with a balloon-borne experiment. With the launch of the OSO-3 satellite in 1967, gamma ray astronomy really got its kickstart. The first dedicated gamma ray satellites were the SASB and the COSB. The Compton Gamma Ray Observatory was a technological leap from these earlier satellites. Very high energy gamma rays can be detected from the ground via the Cherenkov radiation, named for Pavel Cherenkov, who first discovered it in 1958, and for which he earned a Nobel Prize for Physics in the same year. Cherenkov radiation is produced by the passage of the gamma rays in the Earth's atmosphere, which led to the Hegra, Stacy, Hess, and Magic observatories. By the way, just as a side note, Star Trek character Pavel Chekhov was tongue-in-cheek named for him. Sputnik 3 carried a Cherenkov detector. Interferometric telescopes were developed when French physicist Hippolyte Fizeau, who was first to propose the use of an array of small telescopes to measure the diameter of a star with the same precision as a single telescope, which was as large as the whole array, a technique which later became known as astronomical interferometry. In 1891, Albert A. Michelson, first to accurately measure the speed of light, successfully used the technique for the measurement of astronomical angular diameters for the moons of Jupiter. It took another 30 years for direct interferometer measurement of stellar diameters, the first of which was Betelgeuse, when the 20-foot interferometer was mounted on the 100-inch Hooker telescope by Michelson and Francis D. Pease. Pease had existed George Ritchie at Yerkes and discovered the first planetary nebula within a globular cluster. In 1946, Sir Martin Ryle, good, you picked that one, Nobel Prize winner in 1974 and the 12th Astronomer Royal, and Derek D. Von Berg, there he is, he's recognized, located a number of new cosmic radio sources by constructing a radio analog of the Michelson interferometer. Signals from 2 radio antennas were added electronically to produce interference. With the development of larger arrays, the necessary Fourier transforms could be more rapidly performed. The first aperture synthesis imaging instruments were soon developed, which could obtain high-resolution images without the need of the giant parabolic reflector to perform the Fourier transform. This technique is due is now used in most radio astronomy observations. In 1995, this imaging technique was demonstrated on an array of separate optical telescopes for the first time, allowing further improvement in resolution. In 2008, MIT Professor Max Tegmark and Matthias Zaldiwaga proposed a fast Fourier transform telescope, a design in which lenses and mirrors could be dispensed with altogether when computers became fast enough to perform all the necessary transforms. And that is the story of those telescopes. These are the sources that I have on that, and that gives you the end of the history of the telescope. I will probably be giving the first again at some point in the near future, and if you haven't seen it, it might be interesting for you to see. The history of the telescope is very fascinating. Yeah. And that's it. 9 minutes and 32 seconds.
We are going to take a break in which we will consume all of these snacks here. Who brought the snacks tonight? Ralph DeCue. So if you are interested in providing snacks, as Ralph did tonight, the club can reimburse you up to $20. Yes?
During the break, if there's anyone here who would like to give a presentation at a future meeting, either a full-length or a short presentation, please let me know.
Alrighty.
And it can be on anything we want that's astronomical, right?
On your marks, get set.
And remember the library.
I wanted to ask you a question. Getting that fast Fourier I use that 50,000.
But it's obviously a physics thing that they were looking
If you're doing your PhD thesis, and you happen to mention something like you developed obtained by a fast Fourier transform, it would be okay for somebody in the audience to ask you how would you go about getting the fast Fourier transform, and you better be able to say how to do it. Yeah, well, you need to know that a Fourier transform it's a way of rays of light in one case, in one direction, it's forming spots. In the opposite So that's what they're doing. It's taking a big bunch of spot images on stars at different and it's fine thing because photons are reaching one telescope before the other, and they keep on moving that all of that information in a thing called a master. And that's where the transformers were identified in 2D about 30 to 40 years ago, and they allow it to be done like this instead of taking days and days.
That's what it was.
Oh, you got it. How are you?
I've been able to do it. Just what I have. I use media, but probably back to the other.
So this is, I find this interesting. Picked up.
Yeah, you tell me you got this new camera. You're living over here in Pontiac. Upper Hill. Okay. What time do you work till? Because I could stop over and I don't work either. I'll send you an email and you send me your address and we'll set something up. Great. Okay.
You're being interested. I can bring you in when I'm done.
That's awesome. Color pictures and that. Ooh, color photographs.
Okay, good seeing you. I'm into the handmade stuff. I like the time involved.
No, yeah, no, I totally.
Where you putting all this?
Oh, year late. Okay, that's perfect.
We are working on a budget.
That's easy a couple of years ago.
All right.